The Drav'eth did not lose. It was not in their nature. It was not in their vocabulary. If they had dictionaries, which they didn't because written language was for weaklings, the word defeat wouldn't be in there either. That was why when the High Warlord proposed a grand hunt on a newly discovered, primitive world, the elite among their kind leaped at the challenge. A planet teeming with life, with creatures that had ruled unchecked for millennia? It would be a demonstration of their superiority, a testament to their untouchable place as the greatest hunters in the universe. So naturally, when Khavorn, war-scarred and proud, stepped onto the soil of Earth for the first time, he expected glory. Instead, he sneezed violently. What in the sacred void was that? Vrash, his second-in-command, recoiled. Khavorn grunted, shaking his head. Atmospheric irritant. Irrelevant. They stood at the heart of a vast wilderness, surrounded by towering trees and dense foliage. The air smelled of damp earth, alien yet invigorating. Around them, the rest of their hunting party spread out, adjusting weaponry, scanning the terrain. Their sleek, armored figures cast long shadows in the dappled light, and each movement exuded confidence. This was just another hunt, the same as countless before. Vrash clicked his mandibles in amusement. I expected more. This planet reeks of simplicity. A scout snorted. Its apex predators are lumbering beasts with no claws worth mentioning. He gestured toward the biological database they had compiled before landing. One of them is literally a chubby, slow-moving plant-eater. They call it a cow. The squad burst into laughter. Khavorn smirked. Perhaps we will spare it. Any creature that survives through sheer lack of ambition deserves some respect. A rustling in the underbrush silenced them. Instantly, weapons were raised. Movement, something large. It emerged from the trees with a deep, rumbling growl, its massive form covered in fur, its jaws bristling with teeth. A bear, one of the hunters identified, scanning it with his visor. 8 feet tall, 600 pounds. Khavorn observed the beast, unimpressed. Shoot it. A plasma bolt struck the bear square in the chest. The creature staggered, roared in defiance, and took a step forward. Another shot. Another. Finally, it slumped to the ground, its growl fading into silence. The hunters stared at the corpse. Vrash nudged it with a boot. I failed to see how this was a challenge. Another scout grumbled. I was hoping for at least one of them to put up a fight. Khavorn nodded toward the forest. Then let's find something that will. They ventured deeper into the wilderness, tracking movement, hunting whatever caught their sensors. A pack of wolves? Dispatched within moments. A venomous snake? Incinerated before it could coil. Even a mountain lion, stealthy and cunning, barely had time to blink before it was skewered on a blade. The hunt was dull. Too easy. A disappointment. By nightfall, their enthusiasm had faded, replaced with idle conversation and the occasional half-hearted jab at Earth's unimpressive fauna. They set up camp in a clearing, activating their cloaking barriers and calibrating their environmental suits. This has been a waste, Vrash muttered, sharpening his blade. I could have stayed home and hunted something with dignity. Khavorn was about to agree when a message crackled over their comms. This is Scout Zrak. We have a problem. The unease in the warrior's voice immediately put the squad on alert. Report, Khavorn commanded. A pause. Then, I don't know what happened. Jek's gone. Vrash frowned. Gone? There was no sound. No struggle. One moment he was there, the next just gone. The team exchanged glances. Losing a warrior without a trace? Impossible. The Drav'eth were not weaklings who stumbled into traps. Khavorn activated his visor, scanning for movement. Remain where you are. We're coming to your position. They moved swiftly, weapons primed, their usual arrogance replaced with wary focus. When they arrived, they found Zrak standing alone, his posture tense. He was right here, Zrak said, voice low. I turned away for a second. When I looked back, he was gone. Khavorn's eyes narrowed. He gestured to his squad. Scan for energy signatures. If something took him, we'll... A shout. One of the hunters dropped to his knees, clutching his stomach. He convulsed, eyes wide with shock. What is he collapsed, unmoving. Weapons were raised. Kavorn's mind raced. Enemy fire? No impact wounds, Vrash said, voice tight. The warrior's body jerked once, then stilled. Something cold crept into Kavorn's chest. Asterisk, no struggle. No external damage, asterisk. This was not a fight. This was something else. Another cough. Then another. A scout staggered back, shaking. I don't feel right, he rasped. His breathing grew ragged. His mandibles trembled. Then he too crumpled. Silence fell over the squad. Kavorn activated his bioscanner. Data flooded in, lines of text flashing across his visor. The results made no sense. Internal failure. Oxygen levels dropping. Fever spike. Unknown contaminants detected. His blood ran cold. Not weapons. Not an enemy. The planet itself was killing them. A new sound filled the air. Faint, persistent. A high-pitched whine, growing louder. One of the warriors slapped at his arm, cursing. Some kind of flying parasite. A tiny creature flitted away. Kavorn barely saw it. A mere speck in the darkness. Another hunter collapsed. Vrash's voice was tight with controlled fear. What have we walked into? Kavorn did not answer, because for the first time in his life, he didn't know, and that terrified him. Vrash had never seen a Drav'eth die without a fight. Not once. Warriors fell in battle, torn apart by claws or seared by plasma fire. They did not. Asterisk could not asterisk. Simply drop where they stood, convulsing like overcooked larvae. Yet here they were, falling like weak-blooded prey. Kavorn knelt beside one of the bodies, his visor flickering through diagnostics. The results were nonsensical. No wounds. No toxins. No trace of an attack. Zrak wheezed beside him. I feel sluggish. Vrash observed him with growing unease. The scout's armor looked looser, as though he had shrunk inside of it. His posture, once taut with readiness, sagged like overripe fruit on the vine. Kavorn's jaw tightened. Everyone full-body scans. Now, the remaining warriors activated their biosensors. The results flashed across their visors. Elevated temperature. White blood cell counts skyrocketing. Oxygen absorption dropping. Foreign microbial invasion detected. Silence fell over the squad. Even the forest around them seemed to hold its breath. Vrash was the first to speak. Microbial invasion? His mandibles twitched. You mean we're sick? Zrak coughed, doubling over. Kavorn's fingers curled into fists. No, this is something else. He gestured at the bodies. Sickness doesn't kill warriors in minutes. A weak chuckle escaped from one of the hunters. Maybe the cow did this. Vrash shot him a look. What? The warrior swayed on his feet. We mocked it. Perhaps it cursed us. He let out a laugh that ended in a cough. The great cow demands vengeance. Zrak groaned. If I die because of a cow. He didn't finish the sentence. He collapsed. Kavorn was at his side instantly. His skin was burning hot beneath his armor, yet he shivered as though freezing. His breathing was shallow, unfocused. The squad exchanged glances. A creeping realization slithered through them. Earth wasn't fighting them with claws or fangs. It wasn't sending its strongest beasts to face them in glorious combat. No, it was far crueler than that. It was killing them with its smallest creatures. Vrash inhaled sharply. We need to return to the ship. Now. Kavorn didn't argue. They activated their distress beacon and began moving. The terrain blurred around them. Every step felt heavier. The air, which had seemed crisp and full of life upon arrival, now pressed down like a weight, thick and suffocating. One of the younger warriors stumbled. Can't run. His voice was hoarse, as if something inside him was shriveling. Vrash grabbed his arm. Yes, you can. They pressed on, staggering, pushing past their failing bodies. Every breath was a battle. Every moment a fight against an unseen enemy they didn't understand. One by one, they began to slow. One by one, they collapsed. Vrash was the last to fall. His vision blurred, the world tilting at odd angles. He saw Kavorn ahead of him, still moving, dragging himself forward on sheer will. Then everything went dark. When Vrash's eyes flickered open, the world swam. His head pounded with a pressure that felt like something was trying to crawl out of his skull. He was lying on the ground, his armor's automed system whirring weakly, trying and failing to stabilize him. He turned his head. Kavorn sat slumped against a tree, visor cracked, his breath ragged. He was conscious. Barely. Vrash forced his mouth to work. "We make it?" Kavorn let out a dry, humorless chuckle. "If this is what making it feels like, I'd rather we didn't." The others lay motionless, some still breathing. Vrash coughed and tasted something metallic. "Not good." The ship. Kavorn shook his head. "Still half a day's journey." He gestured weakly to the sky. "Beacons active. If they hear it." Vrash stared at him. "And if they don't?" Kavorn didn't answer. A mosquito landed on his arm. He watched it numbly as it plunged its tiny, insignificant needle into his skin. He should have swatted it away. But he was too tired, too drained. And for the first time in his life, Kavorn, the greatest hunter in the galaxy, understood what it meant to be prey. Kavorn had fought on 100 worlds. He had crushed titans, torn through beasts that towered over warships, and faced enemies that wielded weapons capable of splitting mountains. But never, not once, had he faced a foe he couldn't see. And yet here he was, dying. Slowly, pathetically. The air around him felt thick, every breath a labor. His armor, once a second skin, was now an unbearable weight pressing down on his failing body. Somewhere nearby, Vrash groaned, shifting slightly before going still again. The others were quiet. Too quiet. Kavorn's vision blurred, flickering between darkness and hazy patches of light. His mind felt wrong. Not battle-weary, not wounded, but hollowed out. His body, built for war, was being unraveled from the inside. All by something he couldn't fight. A dry chuckle rasped in his throat. "This is how it ends?" Vrash shifted, barely mustering a response. "I had hoped for something more dramatic." Kavorn smirked, though it took most of his remaining energy. "You wanted a dramatic death?" "Well," Vrash wheezed, being slowly digested by an invisible swarm of microscopic demons doesn't exactly scream warrior's glory. He coughed and muttered, "I was promised an apex predator." Kavorn exhaled sharply, something between amusement and resignation. "Technically, we did find the most efficient killer on this planet." Vrash tilted his head weakly. "Oh, and what would that be?" Kavorn lifted a trembling hand and pointed at a mosquito that had landed on his arm. Vrash stared. Then he let out something that sounded suspiciously like a laugh. "Glorious. We have been bested by a flying parasite the size of an ice speck." Kavorn gave a weak nod. "Tell no one?" A long silence followed, filled only by the quiet hum of the forest. It was almost peaceful, if one ignored the overwhelming dying part. Vrash sighed. "Our distress beacon?" Kavorn blinked sluggishly at his wrist display. The signal was still broadcasting, at least assuming his deteriorating body hadn't hallucinated setting it up. Not that it mattered. Even if their ship received the signal in time, even if a retrieval squad arrived, what then? What could they possibly do? Their bodies were failing in ways Drav'eth medicine had never encountered. Their immune systems, designed to resist poisons, withstand radiation, and adapt to extreme environments, were utterly unequipped for Earth's microbial onslaught. Kavorn's fingers twitched as he tried to tap a command into his wrist console. Maybe if he rerouted auxiliary power to the... A warning flashed across his visor. Cognitive function declining. System shut down imminent ****. Well, that wasn't ideal. Vrash exhaled shakily. Kavorn, his name had never sounded so heavy. He turned his head slightly, vision narrowing to a thin tunnel. Vrash was staring at the sky, his normally sharp eyes unfocused. "I think this is it." Kavorn wanted to deny it, to push himself up, force his body into one last act of defiance. But he couldn't move. Not really. Even his thoughts were growing distant, floating just beyond his reach. For the first time in his life, there was nothing left to fight. A mosquito landed on Vrash's forehead. Kavorn let out a breathless chuckle. "It seems they're celebrating their victory." Vrash gave a weak, lopsided smirk. Deserved. His chest rose. Fell. Didn't rise again. Cavorn stared at him for a long moment. Then, slowly, he let his head rest back against the tree. Above him, the stars blurred and shimmered, distant and unconcerned. Somewhere in the depths of the galaxy, the Drav'eth would wait for their warriors to return, never knowing that Earth had claimed them without lifting a single claw. The greatest hunters in the universe, felled by something so small they couldn't even see it. The irony was almost beautiful. A final thought drifted lazily through Cavorn's mind before the darkness took him. If the great cow was watching, it was definitely laughing. And then nothing.